What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so this is the situation we have right here. This is Tropical Depression Celia. I'm starting to notice some more storm activity closing more to the left of the center. And yeah, it's actually that storm activity is also moving quite close, honestly, to the center of circulation, which, if we pause it right here, never mind. If we look at it right here, it's actually good. You can tell what's going on right here. So yeah, there's some storm activity that's closing into that. So that's something we need to pay attention to. Could this be a sign of this thing starting to organize? We don't know. Only time will tell. And if these storms keep bubbling up though, and start to encompass more of the center of circulation, this might be the beginning of this organization phase, as the wind shear has calmed down a bit since last night. So we're going to have to take a look at it. Here's the cone. It's still expected to become a hurricane by Friday, with winds at 80 miles per hour by the time of Saturday, and after that we don't know, because by that point it's so far out that anything after 5 days the NHC doesn't really do. So we have the situation right here. It's expected to remain a depression. It does appear that it's starting to organize a little bit, but we don't know how quickly it's going to last. Some are saying it's going to remain a depression for the next day or so before intensifying into a tropical storm on tomorrow afternoon, and then it gradually develops into a hurricane. Which, if that does, that would be the third hurricane of the third named storm in the Pacific season, which that is a major implication. I keep saying this like a broken record, because that has implications to what happens in late July, early August, mid-August, late August, early September, mid-September, late September. That has implications for what happens when hurricane season starts exploding, which is generally around late July, after July 20th. That's when it starts to really start exploding in intensity, and the storms start exploding as well. So yeah, that's the situation we have right here with this. Let's go ahead and take a look at the tracks of this as well. Kind of matches what the cone is saying, although it is a little bit spaced out, which is typical with these kinds of systems. The intensity, though, is something we need to keep an eye on. It has been, the majority of the models agree that it's going to become a hurricane. The H-Wharf has this thing now to a Category 3, so like I said, Cat 4 was a bit far-fetched. It's like nothing's off the table right now. Because the reason it's not off, because this thing, if it continues, as these storms continue to bubble up and they start moving around the center of circulation, then there are grounds for potential development of a similar pace. Actually, if this thing like organizes and has storms wrapped around the center of circulation completely by the end of the day today, then we could see something like that. But again, nothing's off the table. I think, as of right now, for now, in my opinion, it's just too early for me to give you a range of how strong this thing's going to be. Mostly because the models are so so spread out, and the fact that this thing is still a tropical depression, albeit starting to organize a bit, it's just a bit far-fetched, and just too early for me to say if this thing's going to be basically how strong it's going to get. But I will say, when it comes to that, we'll have to take a look at some of the models. We're going to take a look at the HMON first, because this is the latest run. The latest run we have right here becomes it actually moves closer to the coast, which I don't think is going to happen. But then it continues on. It starts to organize. And in the next 24 hours, it starts becoming more of a tropical storm, and then it starts to intensify at a modest pace. Then it becomes a hurricane. It drops the max it drops down is 972. It actually continues dropping down to 967 millibars, which that's an interesting thing to take a look at, because this thing kind of intensifies at a gradual pace. It doesn't intensify rapidly. It just intensifies at a consistent and gradual pace, bottoming out at 967 millibars. Basically, this looks like this would end up once again being a Category 2 hurricane if you take a look at it. So yeah, this thing just gradually develops. Although an Iowa replacement cycle could potentially take place, and this thing bottoms out at 967, Category 2 hurricane. So that's what the HMON is saying. Let's go to the CMC to see what they're saying, because that's the model out of all of these that has this somewhat weak in making landfall in Mexico, which I don't think is going to happen. And basically, they're saying this thing doesn't truly develop into a storm until the 2.5 days, and then it starts to organize, becomes a hurricane, and then it weakens as it moves on shore, makes landfall in Mexico, and that's pretty much the last we hear of it, which I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the thing is not going to be making landfall in Mexico unless the currents and the winds currents just shift gradually, not gradually, like rapidly towards that direction. The GFS we're gonna have to take a look at next. So that's basically it right here. This is where it is now. So here we are as this develops. They're having this thing actually at a slower pace as well. They have this thing developing at a slower pace, not developing to a storm until potentially 2 to 3 days actually, which is an interesting thing to take a look at. But when it does go, it starts to really bottom out in intensity. It basically then stagnates a bit. The lowest pressure is down to 969, similar to the HMON. So I would say Category 2 strength as well with this one. As time goes on, and then it starts weakening, and then it kind of dissipates in the Pacific Ocean as those waters get cooler. So that's the GFS we have right here. The HWRF latest run has this going down to 957 millibars right here. But before we do, we need to give you the context to how they're expecting this thing to play out. So this is where it is now. It actually organizes at a rather quick pace, potentially becoming a tropical storm by the next day or so, which is why I said, by the end of the day, which is why I said that if this thing does get stuff together, and if it does, in this area of storms right here, it does continue to organize and start wrapping around the center of circulation, which it appears that it is starting to do at a somewhat slow pace. Then there is a possibility that this thing becomes what actually happens, but again, that possibility is low. We're gonna have to wait and see when it comes to that. It continues to develop, and then it really pretty much rapidly intensifies as time goes on. It then weakens. Actually, no, it doesn't weaken. Then it slows down due to an eye wall replacement cycle, and then it really ramps up in intensity. And then it starts kind of basically. It actually stagnates somewhat. It looks like the eye wall replacement cycle occurs somewhere around here. If this thing develops, like this is 87 hours out, and they're already expecting this thing to be a Cat 2 to Cat 3 hurricane. Then the eye wall replacement cycle takes place. Then they have this intensifying into a Category 3 major hurricane at this point, which again isn't impossible, but it is improbable at this time, and it'll depend on how quick this thing develops. Not really develops, how quick this thing reorganizes. That is, and basically we'll have to pay attention to this. So that's pretty much going to close down this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps me out. It helps me make more videos like these. The goal of this channel is to get more people engaged with weather, which is what I hope I am doing with this video. I will continue to be monitoring the situation as time goes on. But with that being said, guys, have a wonderful day and stay safe.